What happens when one reckless night shatters a perfect life? Meet Sophia, a vibrant young professional whose dream job celebration spirals into a scandal that costs her everything. When a hidden camera exposes her betrayal, her husband Diego fights back, not with anger, but with a plan that will leave you stunned. Buckle up for a story of love, betrayal, and a twist you won't see coming. Subscribe and hit the bell for more gripping tales. The Miami skyline glittered under a velvet night sky, its neon pulse syncing with the bass lines spilling from the rooftop bar. Sofia Alvarez, 29, stood at the heart of the celebration, her laughter cutting through the hum of chatter and clinking glasses. Her tech startup had just launched a game-changing app, and tonight's party marked the end of a grueling year. She'd poured everything into this project: late nights, bold pitches, endless code revisions, and now, her team's success echoed in the applause of colleagues and investors. Sophia thrived in the spotlight, her energy magnetic as she moved from one conversation to the next, shaking hands, sharing quick stories of the app's chaotic development. Her confidence wasn't arrogance, it was hard-earned, the kind that comes from proving doubters wrong. Beside her, Diego Morales, her husband of 3 years, sipped a soda, his calm presence a quiet counterpoint to her spark. A high school history teacher, Diego preferred grading papers to small talk, but he'd come tonight for Sophia. He always did. When she'd begged him to join, promising it'd be a quick appearance, he'd agreed with a half-smile, knowing her quick meant hours. Now, he leaned against a railing, watching her navigate the crowd with ease. He admired her drive, even if crowds drained him. Their differences worked, her fire, his steadiness. Or so he thought. The bar buzzed with Miami's elite, tech founders, venture capitalists, and local influencers. Live music pulsed, a salsa band keeping the energy high. Sophia caught Diego's eye across the room, flashing a grin that said, "Isn't this amazing?" He raised his glass in a small toast, but his gaze drifted to a familiar figure weaving through the crowd. Mateo Cruz, Sophia's ex from college. Mateo, now 30, had traded his startup dreams for a side hustle as a rideshare driver after his own company tanked. His charm, though, hadn't faded. He worked the room with a wide smile, shaking hands like he belonged. Diego's stomach tightened when Mateo approached Sophia, his voice carrying over the music. "Still stealing the show, Soph?" Mateo teased, his tone light, but laced with something sharper. "Some things never change." Sophia laughed, brushing off the comment, but Diego caught the flicker in her eyes. Nostalgia, maybe, or something else. He shifted, his grip on the glass tightening. Mateo had been a sore spot early in their marriage, a name that surfaced in late-night talks about pasts best left behind. Sophia swore it was ancient history, but Diego wasn't so sure. Mateo's presence tonight felt like a glitch in an otherwise perfect evening. "Mateo, didn't expect you here," Sophia said, her voice bright but careful. "You know half the team?" "Networking," he replied, winking. "Gotta stay in the game somehow." Diego stayed put, watching their exchange. Mateo's casual mention of their spark back in college hit like a stray spark in dry grass. Sophia deflected, steering the talk to the app, but Diego's unease grew. He wasn't jealous, not exactly. He trusted Sophia, but Mateo's easy familiarity, the way he leaned closer to her, stirred something primal. Diego pushed it down, telling himself it was nothing. Just a party. Just a moment. Sophia, meanwhile, soaked in the night's energy. The app's success felt like her own, a validation of every sacrifice. She accepted a glass of sparkling wine from a passing tray, then another, the bubbles loosening her usual restraint. She danced with a group of coworkers, her movements fluid, carefree. Diego watched, torn between pride and a nagging sense she was slipping into a version of herself he didn't quite know. When he caught her eye again, he signaled toward the exit, mouthing, "Ready?" Sophia frowned, shaking her head. She wasn't done yet. "Come on, Diego, it's my night," she called over, her voice sharp with irritation. "Just a bit longer." He hesitated, then nodded, slipping his jacket on. "Call a ride when you're ready," he said, his tone even but firm. He kissed her forehead, ignoring the curious glances from nearby colleagues, and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of Sophia laughing with Mateo, their heads close, her hand brushing his arm. The image stuck, a splinter in his mind. Unbeknownst to Sofia, Diego had installed a dashcam in their car months earlier after a carjacking scare in their neighborhood. The device, meant for safety, recorded everything, video and audio, ready to capture whatever happened next. As Diego stepped into the humid Miami night, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw you leave. Keep an eye on her tonight. No name, no context, just a warning that made his pulse spike. The rooftop party thrummed with energy, the salsa band's rhythm pushing the crowd into a frenzy of movement and laughter. Sofia Alvarez, now 3 glasses deep into sparkling wine, felt the night's pulse in her veins. The launch of her startup's app was a triumph, and the buzz of colleagues' praise fueled her exhilaration. She danced near the edge of the crowd, her steps bold, unburdened by the weight of responsibility. The Miami skyline stretched out below, a silent witness to her abandon. She hadn't noticed Diego's absence at first, too caught up in the moment, but now, with the party peaking, she scanned the room and realized he was gone. Her phone buzzed in her purse, buried under a pile of napkins and business cards she'd collected. She ignored it, assuming it was Diego checking in. Instead, she found herself drawn back to Mateo Cruz, who lingered nearby, his rideshare driver badge clipped to his jacket, a stark contrast to the polished tech crowd. He'd been circling her all night, his banter sharp yet familiar, pulling her back to their college days when life felt simpler, wilder. Sofia, emboldened by the alcohol, leaned into their conversation, her laughter louder than necessary. "You're still trouble, Mateo," she teased, nudging his shoulder as they stood by a high-top table. "Driving strangers around now? Bet you've got stories." Mateo grinned, but his eyes flicked to the crowd, wary. "More than you'd think. Pays the bills since the startup crashed." He paused, his tone shifting. Saw Diego leave. "You good?" Sofia's smile faltered, a flicker of guilt surfacing. "He's fine, just not a party guy." She waved it off, sipping her drink, but Mateo's gaze lingered, searching. He mentioned their old college hangouts, the late-night study sessions that always ended in debates or stolen glances. Sofia felt a pull, a dangerous nostalgia. The wine blurred her edges, and she let herself lean closer, her voice dropping to a playful whisper. "Remember when we thought we'd run the world?" she said, her hand grazing his arm. "What happened to that, Mateo?" He laughed, but it was strained. "Life's off. It humbles you." He stepped back, glancing at his phone. "Got a ride request. You need one. I'm on the clock." Sofia hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, take me home. Let's catch up properly." The words spilled out before she could rethink them, her judgment clouded by the night's high. She followed him to the elevator, ignoring the unread messages piling up on her phone, Diego's name flashing among them. The humid Miami air hit her as they stepped outside, and Mateo's black sedan waited at the curb, its dashcam light blinking faintly. In the car, Sofia sank into the passenger seat, the leather cool against her skin. Mateo adjusted the rearview mirror, his movements practiced, but his silence carried weight. The radio played low, a soft reggaeton beat filling the space. Sofia, still riding the party's wave, kept talking, her words loose, unguarded. She complimented Mateo's confidence, how he always seemed to land on his feet. Then, unprompted, she mentioned Diego, how steady he was, but how that steadiness sometimes felt like a cage. "He's great, don't get me wrong," she said, her voice slurring slightly. "But it's like, I miss feeling alive, you know? Like back then." She looked at Mateo, her eyes catching his in the dim light. He gripped the wheel tighter, his jaw set. "Soph, you're drunk," he said, keeping his tone light but firm. "Let's get you home, yeah?" She laughed, brushing off his caution. "Come on, don't act like you forgot us." Her hand found his arm again, lingering this time. The air in the car shifted, heavy with unspoken history. Mateo pulled into a quiet side street, the engine idling. He turned to her, his expression torn. "Sofia, this isn't right. Diego's my friend. You're married." His voice cracked, betraying his resolve. But Sofia, caught in a haze of wine and impulse, leaned closer, her breath warm against his cheek. "Just tonight," she whispered. "No one has to know." Before he could respond, she kissed him, her hands pulling him in. Mateo froze, then softened, his resistance crumbling under the weight of the moment. The dashcam's red light blinked steadily, capturing every second. As they pulled apart, breathless, Sophia's phone lit up with a new notification, not from Diego, but from an unknown sender. A grainy photo appeared, Sophia and Mateo, mid-conversation at the party, taken from across the room. The caption read, "Careful who you trust tonight." Her heart raced, but the alcohol dulled her panic. She dismissed it as a prank, unaware that someone at the party had been watching her every move. The sedan's engine ticked softly in the quiet Miami side street, the hum of the city distant now. Sofia Alvarez, her pulse still racing from the impulsive kiss, leaned back in the passenger seat, her breath uneven. Mateo Cruz sat rigid, his hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the dashboard. The dashcam's red light pulsed, unnoticed by either of them, recording the charged silence that followed. Sophia's phone lay in her lap, the mysterious photo and its cryptic warning, "Careful who you trust tonight," still glowing on the screen. She swiped it away, her mind too foggy to process the implications, the wine dulling her instincts. Mateo broke the silence first, his voice low, strained. "Sophia, this can't happen. Diego's not just your husband. He's my brother, practically." He rubbed his temples, as if trying to erase the last few minutes. "We need to forget this." Sophia's laughter was sharp, almost reckless. "Forget? You felt it too, Mateo? Don't pretend." She reached for his hand, but he pulled away, shaking his head. Her words tumbled out, fueled by alcohol and a desperate need to reclaim something lost. Maybe the thrill of her younger self, maybe something else. "Diego's steady, sure, but he doesn't see me anymore. Not like you do." Mateo's jaw tightened. He started the car, the engine's low rumble cutting through her words. "You're not thinking straight. I'm taking you home." But Sophia, defiant, unbuckled her seatbelt and slid closer, her hand resting on his thigh. The air grew thick, the boundary between past and present dissolving. Mateo's resolve wavered, his eyes meeting hers for a fleeting second. That was all it took. They moved to the back seat, the moment spiraling into something neither could stop, a brief, chaotic surrender to impulse, captured in stark clarity by the dashcam's unblinking lens. When it was over, reality crashed in. Sophia adjusted her posture, smoothing her skirt, her chest tight with a mix of adrenaline and dread. Mateo returned to the driver's seat, his silence heavier than before. The car felt smaller, the air stale. Sophia stared out the window, the city lights blurring as guilt began to seep through the haze of alcohol. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Diego, "You okay? Call me." She ignored it, her fingers trembling as she clutched Mateo's jacket, draped over her shoulders. "Take me home," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mateo nodded, starting the drive without a word. The ride was quiet, the radio off, the only sound the hum of tires on asphalt. When they reached Sophia's house, a modest two-story in a quiet Coral Gables neighborhood, she stepped out, avoiding Mateo's gaze. The front door loomed like a threshold she wasn't ready to cross. She walked inside, the weight of Mateo's jacket a tangible reminder of her mistake. Diego sat on the living room couch, his posture stiff, the glow of his phone casting shadows across the room. He didn't look up as Sophia entered, but his voice was flat, deliberate. "Late night." It wasn't a question. Sophia forced a smile, her heart pounding. "Yeah, got carried away. Hired a driver for safety." The lie felt brittle, but she pressed on, dropping her purse on the counter. "Party was wild. You should have stayed." Diego's eyes flicked to her, then to the jacket. "Whose is that?" His tone was neutral, but it carried an edge that made Sophia's stomach lurch. She shrugged, too quickly. "Just the driver's. Forgot to give it back." She moved toward the stairs, desperate to escape, but Diego stood, blocking her path. His silence was louder than any accusation, his gaze piercing through her flimsy defenses. "I called you," he said, holding up his phone. "Texted too. Nothing." Sophia fumbled for an excuse, her voice unsteady. "Phone was buried in my purse. I was networking, lost track of time." Each word felt like a step deeper into a trap. Diego nodded, but his expression didn't soften. He picked up a flash drive from the coffee table, his movements deliberate, and plugged it into his laptop. "Got something to show you," he said, his voice eerily calm. The screen flickered to life, displaying grainy footage from the dashcam. Sophia's breath caught as she saw herself climbing into Mateo's car, her laughter filling the audio. Then her flirtatious words, the kiss, the shift to the back seat. The video didn't show everything, but it showed enough. Her voice, her choices, the betrayal laid bare. She sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face, a choked sob escaping. "Diego, please, turn it off." He didn't. The footage played on, each second a nail in the coffin of their marriage. When it finally stopped, Diego closed the laptop with a soft click. "I checked the car this morning," he said, his voice steady but laced with pain. "Thought I'd pick up some groceries. Found this instead." He pointed to the flash drive. "You didn't just slip up, Sophia. You chose this. Every step." Diego revealed he'd received the same anonymous photo Sophia had seen, a shot of her and Mateo at the party, sent from an unknown number. But there was more. A second message, received just an hour ago, with a time-stamped screenshot of Mateo's rideshare app, showing he deliberately accepted Sophia's ride request despite knowing her address. "He planned to see you," Diego said, his voice breaking. "And you let him." The living room was suffocating, the silence between Sofia Alvarez and Diego Morales thicker than the humid Miami air outside. The laptop screen had gone dark, but the dashcam footage lingered in Sofia's mind like a wound that wouldn't close. She sat frozen on the couch, Mateo's jacket still draped over her shoulders, her hands trembling as she tried to form words. Diego stood across from her, his arms crossed, his calm exterior masking a storm. The flash drive on the coffee table felt like a loaded weapon, its contents having shattered their world in minutes. "I was drunk," Sofia stammered, her voice cracking. "It wasn't me, Diego. I didn't mean for this." She reached out, but he stepped back, his movement sharp, deliberate. His eyes, usually warm, were cold, unyielding. "You didn't just stumble into this," he said, his tone measured but cutting. "You flirted. You pushed. You chose Mateo, knowing who he was to me." He paused, his voice dropping. "My best friend, Sofia. The guy who stood next to me when we got married." Sofia's throat tightened, tears spilling over. She wanted to argue, to blame the wine, the party's chaos, anything but herself, but the footage left no room for excuses. Diego's revelation about Mateo's rideshare app, how he deliberately picked her up, burned in her chest. Mateo hadn't just been a driver that night. He'd sought her out, and she'd let it happen. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words hollow against the weight of her actions. Diego turned away, picking up his phone. "I sent the video to the rideshare company," he said, not looking at her. "Mateo's done. They don't tolerate that kind of conduct." Sofia's eyes widened, a fresh wave of guilt crashing over her. "You didn't have to do that," she said, her voice barely audible. "He tried to stop me." Diego's laugh was bitter, devoid of humor. "Tried? He didn't try hard enough." He set the phone down, his movements slow, final. "I'm staying at my sister's tonight. We'll talk about the next steps tomorrow." He grabbed a duffel bag from the hallway, already packed, and walked out. The front door's click echoed in Sofia's ears as she sat alone, the house suddenly too big, too empty. She tried texting Mateo, a desperate "we need to talk," but the message failed to deliver. He blocked her. Panic clawed at her as she realized the depth of her isolation. Her phone buzzed with notifications, missed calls from Diego, a few from coworkers, but none offered comfort. She scrolled through her contacts, hesitating over Diego's sister, Elena, but couldn't bring herself to call. Not yet. The next morning, Sofia woke to a pounding headache and an inbox full of whispers. A coworker's text read, "Heard about the party. You okay?" Another was blunter, "People are talking." The news had spread, a wildfire fueled by gossip. Sofia's stomach churned as she imagined her team, her friends, judging her. She called in sick, unable to face the office. Instead, she sat at the kitchen counter, staring at the divorce papers Diego had left behind. They were stark, clinical, outlining a clean split. She'd keep her savings, but the house was his. He wanted her out in 30 days. Sofia tried reaching out to Mateo again, this time through a mutual friend's social media. The friend's reply was curt. "He's not talking to anyone right now." Desperate, she drove to his apartment, a cramped building in Little Havana, but no one answered the buzzer. A neighbor, unloading groceries, glanced at her. He moved out yesterday. Said something about starting over. Sophia stood there, the weight of her choices pressing harder. Mateo was gone, and Diego was unreachable. She was alone. Back home, Sophia found an anonymous email waiting in her inbox. Attached was a screenshot of a local forum post, titled Betrayal at the top, a Miami tech tale. The post didn't name her, but the details were unmistakable. Party, rideshare, dashcam. Diego had shared the story, not to humiliate her, but to warn others. The post had hundreds of comments, some sympathetic, others vicious. Sophia's hands shook as she read one. She threw it all away for a fling. Hope it was worth it. The anonymity stung, but the truth hurt more. Later that day, Sophia received a call from an unknown number. It was Elena, Diego's sister, her voice clipped, but not unkind. He's not coming back, Sophia. But you need to know something. That photo you got at the party? The one warning you? I sent it. Elena explained she'd been at the event, invited by a coworker, and saw Sophia with Mateo. She'd hoped the warning would stop things before they went too far. I didn't want this for any of you, she said, then hung up. Sophia stared at her phone, the revelation sinking in. Someone had tried to save her from herself, and she'd ignored it. Sofia Alvarez sat alone in her new apartment, a cramped one-bedroom in a quiet Miami suburb, the hum of a distant air conditioner the only sound breaking the stillness. The divorce papers, signed and returned, lay in a folder on the kitchen counter, their finality a weight she carried in every step. Diego had moved on, staying with his sister Elena while negotiating the sale of their Coral Gables home. Sophia had packed her life into boxes, leaving behind the shared space that once held laughter and promises. Her new job as a part-time receptionist at a dental clinic kept her afloat, but it was a far cry from the tech world's buzz. Each day blurred into the next. Wake, work, sleep, repeat. Her world shrinking to the bare essentials. Her phone, once a lifeline to friends and colleagues, was silent now. The rumors from the party had spread like ink in water, staining her reputation. Coworkers' texts dwindled to polite check-ins, then stopped altogether. Sophia avoided social media, where the anonymous forum post Diego had written still circulated, its comments a mix of pity and scorn. She tried reaching out to Mateo one last time, a voice message left unanswered, his absence a final confirmation that he'd severed all ties. The sting of his silence wasn't love or longing. It was the realization that she'd burned every bridge in one reckless night. One humid afternoon, Sophia walked to a nearby community center, drawn by a flyer for a support group pinned to a coffee shop bulletin board. The meeting room was small, filled with women whose stories mirrored her own. Broken relationships, lost trust, lives upended by choices. Sophia sat quietly, listening as a woman described losing her partner to infidelity, another her career to a moment of weakness. When her turn came, Sophia hesitated, then spoke. She recounted the party, the ride, the dashcam, the fallout, her voice steady but raw. The group listened without judgment, their nods a quiet acknowledgement of shared pain. An older woman, Maria, approached afterward, her words simple but piercing. You can't undo the past, but you can build from the rubble. Those words stuck, a faint spark in Sophia's fog. She began attending the group weekly, finding solace in the stories of others rebuilding. At night, she enrolled in an online course in digital storytelling, drawn to the idea of turning pain into purpose. She started an anonymous blog, not to confess, but to share lessons, posts about accountability, the cost of impulse, the slow work of self-forgiveness. Her first entry, one night, one mistake, drew a handful of readers, their comments sparse but kind. You're not alone, one wrote. Keep going. Diego, meanwhile, channeled his hurt into action. He volunteered at a local youth center, mentoring teens navigating their own mistakes. Sophia learned this through Elena, who'd agreed to meet her at a downtown cafe. Their conversation was brief, tense. Elena revealed Diego had donated the dashcam footage to a community campaign against infidelity, edited to protect Sophia's identity, but clear in its message. Betrayal has consequences. He didn't do it to hurt you, Elena said, her tone firm. He wanted something good to come from this. Sophia nodded, the gesture heavy with gratitude and regret. Diego's grace, even in pain, was a mirror to her own failures. Weeks later, Sophia received an email from an unknown sender, a single line. He's healing. Try to do the same. Attached was a photo of Diego at the youth center, laughing with a group of teens. The sender was listed as Lauren, Mateo's new partner, according to a quick social media search. The message wasn't cruel, just a quiet nudge to move forward. Sophia stared at the photo, her chest tight. Diego's smile, once so familiar, now belonged to a life she'd lost. She closed the email, her resolve hardening. She couldn't change the past, but she could choose what came next. Sophia's blog gained traction, her posts resonating with strangers who'd faced their own reckonings. She wrote about the group, about Maria's words, about the slow climb out of shame. One evening, she published a piece titled Owning the Wreckage, urging readers to face their mistakes head-on. A comment appeared hours later. Your story saved me from making the same one. It was anonymous, but it was enough. Sophia realized redemption wasn't about erasing her actions. It was about using them to help others avoid the same fall. At the next support group meeting, Sophia learned Maria, the older woman who'd inspired her, had been following her blog anonymously. Maria revealed she'd sent the comment about saving herself, having nearly betrayed her own partner years ago. Your words reminded me why I stopped, she said, handing Sophia a notebook. Inside were handwritten stories from the group, compiled as a gift. You're not just surviving, Maria said. You're helping us all. Sophia clutched the notebook, tears welling, a fragile hope taking root.